Today on the TMZ Podcast.
Welcome to the TMZ Podcast. Derek, Jamie, and Eric here. You got the power trio.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2 guys, 1 Jamie.
Yes.
Let's do this.
All right.
Let's jump right in. Dave Chapelle, tell us about it.
Yeah, Dave Chapelle is going to be hosting SNL on November 12th, and people are not happy. So according to some sources, a lot of the writers are boycotting. They don't want to do it. They're not interested after all of his homophobic jokes. But apparently none of the actors are boycotting.
This is fascinating to me because Dave Chapelle hosting SNL, it's happened before, and it used to be one of the most highly anticipated, exciting events. Dave Chapelle was like a king of comedy, and now he's radioactive. Writers don't want to write for him. He's become this controversial figure, given his comedy about trans issues, and people think he's transphobic and so forth.
And there is a non-binary trans writer on the show now.
Yes.
Celestium.
Yes.
It's a writer, and there's also, I believe, a trans member of the cast. Is that not true, or just
I
a
had
writer?
I had not heard that.
Non-binary, I believe.
Non-binary. There is a non-binary member of the cast as well. So this issue is at the forefront. I think SNL is at this weird inflection point where it lost a lot of cast members, and a lot of people think
like
the show
7 from last season,
is something
7 or
like
8?
7, and core members. All they
Yeah.
have sort of for continuity is Keenan at this point, and Chris Redd's gone. All these people are gone. And so Dave Chapelle coming should shake things up, get you some ratings, get you some anticipation, but it's really backfired.
Well, I feel for these actors because the actors, these are their dreams. They get cut left and right that first season. You do not want to piss off King Lorne. If King Lorne says that Dave Chapelle can host, then you need to do what King Lorne says.
I think
so
that's right.
even if they have these opinions, no one's going to stand up and say anything. You don't throw your career away.
Well, that's the thing.
It's
It's definitely not going to be the cast because the older cast members have worked with Dave multiple times now. And so they probably know him and are like, oh, okay, we're okay with it. Because most comedians did stick up for Dave.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but those new cast members, they're not going to say anything.
This is really like a generational clash because Lorne Michaels is quite old. I don't know his personal feelings on cancel culture and wokeness, but I venture to say he's kind of like Harvey, like sort of sick of it and doesn't want to like cancel guys like Dave Chapelle who have been good to the show.
But Dave Chappelle's hosting SNL. Where did he get canceled?
No, fair. Although
if writers don't want to work on it, they don't have to. And this is remember very recently last season, Elon Musk. A lot of people on the staff had issues with that and boycotted that.
Mm-hmm.
They all make jokes about it on the show.
Through the history of the show, back in the 90s, Andrew Dice Clay hosted, and some of the cast members refused to be in sketches with him. So
True.
There's a precedence for this.
Yeah, I think the tolerance for, going forward, though, is less than it used to be. It used to have, like, a controversial person come on and maybe you'd get some headlines, but you wouldn't have writers sit out. I don't remember that. Do you remember writers sitting out a week because of the nature of the views of the host? I don't even remember that for Elon. Like, did people sit out for Elon's episode?
No, but this was Elon pre the current monster he is. I think if Elon today
he was sort of coming to be the monster, but he wasn't quite arrived.
His crown wasn't fitted yet, but it was at the shop. But the thing, it is so interesting because obviously the things that he said, all the homophobia, transphobia, terrible. But then there is the argument of like, well, what's comedy and what's allowed and what is art versus what is hate,
and especially on Saturday Night Live, which has a
Exactly.
record of being offensive itself sometimes.
Yes.
And pull up some old sketches and see how well they hold up.
Oh, God. The things that everybody just cross-dressing and this and that, and they would never do today. But it is, I feel for the writers. I feel for the performers. It is a weird spot to be in.
Let me ask you a question. So in this episode, is Dave Chapelle going to lean into the controversy, which he sometimes likes to do? He's not a troll, I wouldn't say, but he's not afraid of ruffling a few feathers. Or is he going to do a very safe show?
No, it's sort of become his brand since the closer, the special he did. Like his stand-up now, he talks a lot about the gay community and the trans community. Like, and he has leaned very hard into it.
Okay, so then my next question is, will the performers, who it sounds like are going to go forward, even though some of the writers who they stand in solidarity with are sitting this one out, will they dutifully perform whatever Dave Chapelle wants to do, including arguably transphobic skits?
I don't think he's going to come out and do, some sort of stereotypical gay character. Like,
I hope not, but it's become kind of his brand.
I don't think he will do that exactly. But remember last time he hosted in 2020, he just kind of went off script a lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
He dropped the N-word several times, kind of threw the cast off, which normally Lorne Michaels bans hosts for ad-libbing. He hates that because he's like, this show has to work by people sticking to the script.
Yes.
But Dave Chappelle's always gotten a pass for that.
Yes.
So what is he going to do?
My sense is he won't do it. He won't do a safe show, but when he did his comedy special that was so controversial, he made a note of it that he said, this is the last time I'm speaking on these issues, so I'm going to get it all out in this one special. And everyone said, oh my God, that's horrific. Or a lot of people said, that's horrific and we want to cancel you. But he did say, I'm not going to become this kind of comedian who just traffics in comedy that is good for shock value. I don't think that's what Dave Chappelle wants to be. He wants to be funny. He does not want to
be a shock. He doesn't want to be Andrew Dice Clay. That's
right.
not his thing.
I don't think that's his thing. I
we'll
hope
see
so.
But this is the thing for SNL. People are going to watch.
So it's interesting. There are all these reports that the room of writers were sort of not participating and sitting this out. Dave's rep says, actually, I went there. The room was full of writers. They all pitched ideas and seemed very excited about it. And Dave's looking forward to having some fun. So there are different stories out there about the level of boycott we're going to actually see. And it's hard to know because they're writers. So if the performers are there, it's going to look like a regular show.
Well, the room can still be full of writers and several are not.
Yeah.
Correct.
But obviously he's been meeting with them. The show's airing in a couple of days. It's being written and rehearsed right now. So if there was a huge issue, Dave would know.
Yeah.
I think that's right, and he's been on the show before, so he's I think he's got a feel for it, a little bit of the pulse of like what SNL is like in normal circumstances and in abnormal circumstances.
It'll be interesting to see what happens with
It's
that.
going to get good ratings. I think you're right. This
people
is
are
now
going to
create
want
a
to
lot
watch
of
it the next
curiosity.
day.
All right, let's move on to Kanye. We haven't talked about him for a while, so
Kanye. Well, we're talking more about Adidas right now because they are going to be selling Yeezys.
Mm-hmm.
They just aren't going to call them that. So I would love to know how Kanye negotiated his deal with Adidas. So he owns the copyright to Yeezy.
Mm-hmm.
But most of the designs are
probably
owned,
the trademark, but yes.
Yeah. But the designs are owned by Adidas. So they are going to keep selling these shoes that look like Yeezys. They just can't call them that.
They won't be branded as such.
Yeah.
They'll just be the design because the design's very popular, right?
I'm cool with it.
But who for Adidas, and they're going to lose what $500 million in the next year, I think.
Yes.
Off the splitting ways with Kanye. Who's the audience for this? Because Kanye fans are not going to buy non-Yeezy Adidas Yeezys,
and are probably mad at Adidas for turning their back on
they're
Kanye.
boycotting that.
Yes.
And
Adidas fans don't want the stink of Kanye on their shoes.
Right. So it's.
Who are you pleasing here? Maybe Jamie. Jamie wants to wear these
You seemed all about it.
Grab me a cute color.
I agree.
Make them comfy, and I'm sign me up.
I hate, it makes me sound sort of strident about these things, but I don't think you can pull the stink off of Yeezy shoes just by saying they're now called, Adidas.
Breezes.
Yeah, they're Breezes.
I love Breezes.
They will always be seen as Yeezys. The swastika will always be seen as an emblem of the Nazi
All right,
party.
well, I would like mine without swastikas.
Yeah, no.
I don't want
to. Yeah.
You want to rub those out
Yeah,
on yours,
yeah.
at least. Yeah.
Do you have these
Just put a
without
pin over it.
swastikas?
Yeah, do the ones
or,
without them on the heel?
But do people love the design of the shoe so much they really just want it? Or was it just because they love Kanye and wanted his
it's a good
shoe?
point. I never bought them. So I don't know.
They have evolved so much now that then they got so weird, like plasticky looking. The original ones, all brands make little knockoffs of them. When they were just kind of what kind of fabric is that even? I don't know.
Yeah,
Do you know what I
meshy.
mean? The
I know
meshy,
exactly what
it
you're talking
became
about.
a very big
the
trend.
foamy ones look like melted Crocs.
Yes.
I don't know
But
why you want to wear that.
I'm telling you, you go to Old Navy and you're going to find a $5 knockoff of it. So
that's
yeah,
it. Yeah.
you'll
find the cheap melted Crocs.
Sure.
Absolutely. Because
I
I've
know,
seen them. And
I guess. But just these shoes, like, I don't know who Adidas is going to be pleasing with this. Kanye fans will not support this.
No.
People who hate Kanye will not support this.
Right.
Well, you
got to pick a master to serve, right? And they're serving nobody.
You can't sell them for as much as you would for a Yeezy for Kanye's name, I would imagine.
But why not just depart? You've made the decision, which is very difficult, hit your bottom line very hard, to cut ties with Kanye. You have to go through the painful process of pulling your brand and disentangling yourself. It seems like they're kind of trying to, chart a middle
path. Don't you think
path.
we have warehouses and warehouses full of shoes? I don't think they're going to be making
So you think they're just
new.
moving the existing product, the inventory?
Well, yeah, they do. They've already lost a huge chunk of money. You're not going to just eat the cost of all these shoes sitting in these warehouses.
Yeah, I think they're sitting in the warehouse.
Just the inventory, but they won't make any new shoes.
I don't know. We'll see how it sells.
Remember, because Adidas took. Like when all the Kanye things started coming out, the anti-Semitic stuff, people like roasted Adidas because it took them a weekend to cut ties with him, which seemed like a long time in social media time, but in business, 2 days is not a whole lot. So obviously all these things were already in production. They already were looking ahead to what they were going to be doing in 2023. So now they're saddled with this.
Right.
What do we do?
A lot of people will be okay. I mean, an Adidas shareholder is going to say, you have a responsibility as a company that I invest in to sell your product and make money for the bottom line. And so they're going to give them a pass. They're saying, look, it doesn't line Kanye's pockets. It just gives money to Adidas shareholders. So we're okay with this, and you actually have a responsibility to do something with this inventory. If you burn it in a bonfire, you're just burning value.
Yeah.
So interesting. I think morally they're going to have a tough road to
It
hoe.
will be when you see people out wearing post-Kanye Yeezys.
Yeah.
What do you think about that person?
Yeah.
Not even good or bad.
I mean, we'll know
I'm
when
just
Jamie
curious,
comes in her new Breezes.
I'll
We're going to have a live experiment of that.
Her Jay Breezes.
All right, let's move to another story. So Peacock is releasing this documentary called Casey Anthony, Where the Truth Lies. Obviously, the true crime genre is huge in the wake of Dahmer and all the other true crime series. They want to capitalize on it. This is about Casey Anthony, the very famous case where a mother allegedly killed her toddler child. It wasn't an infant. It was a 2-year-old.
And was acquitted.
But Casey Anthony has been very quiet since then. She's given a few comments, but no live interview appearances. And during this trial, her most vocal critic, when it was all the rage, I mean, this was big like Natalie Holloway. This was all over the news for a period of time. Nancy Grace, a former prosecutor who was a talking head and talks about like legal cases, would just rip into Casey Anthony. Call her horrible things.
It became Nancy Grace's claim to fame.
It
like
really
when I
was.
think Nancy Grace, I think Casey Anthony. They're
Top
so
mom.
intertwined. Yeah,
Yes.
top mom.
Top mom.
She called
That's
her
right.
top
That's
mom.
right.
Yeah.
So Nancy Grace would rip into her. So obviously, this thing coming out, people are curious. Well, what do you think of it? She doesn't have very kind things to say about it. Take a listen to this. She was on TMZ Live.
Because they're going to make money. That's why they're doing it. And it's on us whether we watch it or not. And I would like to point out that I was contacted by this group when the director was still working on it to have a sit down with Tot Mom Casey Anthony under these conditions. And I said, absolutely not. Because when I learned I couldn't ask the questions I wanted, I couldn't control what was happening, no way. Because she's going to do exactly what we predict. She's going to have softball questions and lie her way through it with no one to test her, such as under cross-examination.
The old prosecutor in Nancy came out. She used to try cases, and she's, to her credit, she's not, she's true to her word. I like Nancy Grace because she believes these things, and she also was unwilling to sit down for the interview. If she was on here, sort of like, I sat with her, but I got the questions I wanted, and you knew she was sort of paid to be involved in it, it would feel different. But she said, no, I actually refused to because they wanted to do kind of a puff piece or something that I wouldn't want to participate and have my name behind. And she's true to her word.
Well,
she wanted to rip into Casey Anthony.
Obviously, very clearly believes that Casey Anthony murdered her child.
Yes.
So you have to have some sort of conviction. You don't want to help make money for somebody that you think did that. You don't want to help them rehab their image with the public. If you really believe they did it, you're not going to be involved. And she's not.
Do you think
I
there's
do respect that.
any chance that Casey Anthony comes out of this looking better?
Honestly, this sounds insane.
Yeah.
So this case was 2011.
Yes.
People soften over, like if you don't really remember it, if you weren't following it that much and you just watch this, you could be like, oh, well, maybe she didn't, or you could start to feel sorry for her because she's controlling the narrative.
But
Right.
the
And she's going to
narrative,
paint
because
such
we
a
watched the trial,
flattering
you remember
portrait.
this.
the
Yes.
facts are facts that she didn't contact anybody. Her kid was missing for 30 days.
And she'll have some sad reason why.
I'm interested, though. I'm interested.
But I do think
how
it's-
she coped with it by partying and so forth. Like there
Yeah.
were
I
bad
do-
facts that she's going to have to wrestle with.
To Peacock's credit, I do think it's interesting. The title of the special is Casey Anthony, Where the Truth Lies.
Yes.
Is it saying, okay, this is the truth, that she didn't do it and we're going to reveal it? Or is it implying that Casey Anthony's the truth and she's lying?
Yeah, if you're
Like-
doing, don't put the word
Yeah, Casey
lies,
Anthony, Where the
please.
Truth Lies. Like, that almost tells you in the title, she's lying to you.
This is just so
I mean, it's kind of saying that.
Yeah.
It is such an odd move on her part that if, let's say she truly didn't do it, she's been laying low in Florida for years. Why would people finally have forgotten her face? She can go to Trader Joe's and get some whatever.
That's the thing.
Why?
Why dredge this up again?
Weird.
I don't think she leads a normal existence. I think she's a pretty distinct looking person who, when you see her,
She
things
is,
are shouted like kid murderer.
But
at her.
it's been over a decade at this point. I imagine that has lessened
No,
a bit
there's
from what it was.
Has it
She
faded
wasn't.
with
She wasn't.
OJ? Has it faded?
Casey
OJ
Anthony's not
was a
OJ Simpson.
very
He was already
famous
very, very famous.
football player, actor. What are you talking
yeah.
about?
This was a pretty high profile
It was
case. You don't
not.
think she-
Darren,
OJ.
you see her.
Stop it.
You see her at Macy's, and you think, "Did I go to college with her?" You don't go, "Hey, there's a chick that killed her kid."
Yeah, or you think like, or I would think like, that lady looks kind of like Casey Anthony.
Hey, remember her?
But if I see OJ stroll in, I know it's OJ.
Yeah, but you're making it sound like only celebrities can have horrible cases follow them around. People who are just involved in court cases become iconic in
does
themselves.
follow
The
her,
Night
but-
Stalker, Jeffrey Dahmer, these are figures that
I would not know the Night Stalker at Trader Joe's.
You wouldn't?
No.
What if he waved you and you saw the pentagram on his...
Is
well,
he cute?
he's dead, so you'd probably be a little aware.
Like, oh my God, a skeleton.
No,
at
I'm
the grocery
saying
store.
she will always be Casey Anthony, but I'm sure it's much less now than it was a decade ago.
She
I will
looks
agree with
so
that.
why
different.
put your face back on this
Yes.
special, and why do this to
And
yourself
apparently
again?
she's not being paid by Peacock. Obviously, she will make money off of licensing the photos of
course.
Kaylee and all
She'll
the
make
different
money. And
loopholes.
maybe she's just doing it for money. But
Well, that'll drag her through a whole other news cycle if she's monetizing her murderous,
but that's the thing. So
Escapade.
obviously the two things are either she did it or she didn't. If she did it,
And she's the only repository of the truth.
yeah. But I'm saying, so if she did it, why would you put yourself back out there and do this again? If you didn't do it and you went through all this, why put yourself out there and go through it
For
again?
a whole new
Either way,
generation to judge
I
you.
don't
Yeah.
understand.
She wants to clear her name. And look, she must look at the landscape and say, wow, this Jeffrey Dahmer series just cultivated some sort of begrudging sympathy for a monster like Jeffrey Dahmer. A lot of people had problems with that because they said it humanizes him. It gives a whole long arc, and all of a sudden Jeffrey Dahmer is this sort of strange but maybe tormented soul, and you naturally, when you watch someone on television, you feel empathy. You don't just feel anger. When you watch someone for a long period of time, it's impossible to hold all those negative feelings the entire time, and she's thinking, look, this will soften me. Nancy Grace is not going to pepper me with questions. I'm going to get to just tell my story. You can't do that in a courtroom setting because Nancy Grace or the prosecutor gets to pepper you and show all your inconsistencies. She's got a friendly documentarian who's going to allow her to elaborate. I think she thinks it will improve her image. I mean, maybe it's just a cash grab, and that's certainly what Nancy thinks and sounds like what you guys think, but she may think this will soften her image. I think her image is worse than you guys think. I think this woman roams around Florida and people yell like, you disgusting murderer, and she wants to improve
I'm
that.
sure they do, but I think it's fewer people now than it was in 2012.
Yes.
You
So
are
why rile up those other
introducing yourself
people?
And
to
it
a
could get
new
worse.
Yeah.
generation.
Yeah, why?
Let me remind you of the facts of this case.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a totally fair
Yeah, it's
point.
like,
and probably
hello,
true.
I'm Casey Anthony. You may remember me from such murders as Kaylee.
Yes.
You know, like, what?
Yes.
Don't do that.
Yeah, it does have a little bit of Troy McClure to it.
A little bit.
All right, well, we'll see. I mean, look, we're going to see it live. Are you going to be interested in watching that?
I am, and that's the thing that I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Somebody tell me while I'm sitting in my Yeezys.
It's also
Kicking up your feet in swastika Yeezys,
No.
watching the Casey Anthony documentary.
No.
well, because you're going to be DVRing the Dave Chapelle thing at the same time.
Exactly.
So
Right.
Right,
Gotta
yeah,
choose.
so much good content.
Another sad story.
Yeah.
Shall we just go to more sad
Let's
news?
pivot.
yeah.
Aaron Carter. So this story, it just keeps getting sadder. So apparently he never had a closure conversation with his brother Nick and his twin sister Angel. They were estranged at the time, but apparently Aaron felt that they were on good terms when he had died. So a lot of messiness went on over the years. Nick and Angel both had restraining orders against him. He had threatened both of their lives.
Yeah. Nick said that Aaron had threatened to kill his
pregnant
wife.
Yeah.
And then he had said he was going to send hitmen to Angel and
Yeah.
her family. Big old bucket of yuck mess. But apparently Angel had gotten word to Aaron somehow. I don't know whether that's through a friend, whether they were not supposed to be in contact according to the law, but she had gotten a message to him that she wished him well, wanted him to get healthy, and apparently that brought Aaron a lot of peace. So when he did die, he felt that they were on the road to repairing their relationship.
But Nick never felt that.
No.
No, but we know after Aaron died, when Nick performed with the Backstreet Boys, said how he always loved his brother and always, they had their problems, but he loved him.
Yeah.
Look, I think you can love your brother and feel the need to protect your family when your brother
Absolutely.
goes off the rails. It's a very, very sad story to feel that emptiness and the loss. I mean, it is his baby brother. I take him at his word. I don't think there's any insincerity
No, of
with
That's
what's
your
going on.
brother,
It's
but
just
addiction
extremely
is
difficult.
real and mental illness is real. And at a certain point, you have to protect your own family
Yeah.
over.
I guess if you want to look for silver linings in it, that Aaron maybe felt that they were in an okay spot before he died. So at
Exactly.
least there's that. And Nick probably knows that.
And that's comforting, I'm sure, to Nick, even though
yeah,
he didn't feel they
and
were
Nick
in a good
probably
spot.
knows that they were as good as they could have been. Because I think had they been able to have that closure conversation, they wouldn't have had those problems in the first place. I think, had Aaron been able to get himself together and keep his head right and stay clean, there wouldn't have been issues between them. Nick would have happily gotten rid of restraining orders and been like, okay, you could welcome somebody back, because I think, I'm projecting here, but I would assume Nick and Angel knew that it was the addiction.
Of course.
Yes.
And if Aaron could conquer that, then all is forgiven.
I'm sure Nick knows that, but the survivor's guilt that Nick must be feeling must be tremendous because much of Aaron's life was defined by Nick's success. Nick was out in front. He was a member of the Backstreet Boys. He sort of set the path of their lives. And Aaron was always seen, at least by the public, as sort of chasing his brother's fame, maybe riding coattails. He did have his own success.
He was successful, but he was never, his success was
as,
always so small compared to the Backstreet Boys.
Yes. And Nick is entitled to have his own career and pursue his own successes and accomplishments, but he undeniably is a source of a lot of what was going on in Aaron's head, and he knows that. Now, whether it was turned into addiction, I don't want to speculate on that. People, turn to drugs for all sorts of reasons, but there has to be an element of Nick blaming himself, and that's unfortunate. I feel for Nick because
he doesn't deserve that.
He doesn't deserve to feel that way, but it's impossible not to feel that way.
Because Aaron was, 9 years old when he released his first album. Like, he was so young. But you forget, remember, Nick was the youngest of the Backstreet Boys. I mean, he was, 14, 15, 16?
Yeah.
And so he was going through his own growing pains and managing fame and success.
I mean, honestly, he's an example of, child star, somebody who managed to navigate it fairly well.
Yeah,
yes.
and
he had bumps. But
he was one of the most famous people on earth before he was 20.
And they had issues with their parents of being stage monsters.
Gosh.
And so Aaron really it is a fact though that the door was open because of Nick, and he was thrown into this
100%.
role, and he was famous.
Sure.
And I had a really good friend in high school who was his dancer while we were in high school, and the stories she would tell me were insane.
Aaron's dancer.
Yes, she was Aaron's backup dancer. And the stories were insane, just even at 16 of oh God, going out and doing these crazy things. And when he died, she messaged me, and all she said was, "It's so sad that child stars don't get the help they need."
It's remarkable how we repeat these things over and over again, because there is a natural appetite for child stars. They will always exist, and every generation has their version of, oh man, I wish that person had some help. Will they find a better path? When we were growing up, it was Drew Barrymore was the party girl for a while, and
she'd been rehabbed twice by the time she was 12.
But now look
Michael
at Drew
Jackson
Barrymore.
famously,
she's like America's Flower Girl. So some of them do find their way to a healthy lifestyle, but some of them just don't, and it's very sad.
Well, it's like for any child, famous or not, it's who you have around you.
Yes.
Any child who has horrible parents or people abusing them or taking advantage in some other way, whether they're famous or not, their life is still messed up.
Yeah.
You need someone to kind of be able to come in and save you, and Aaron didn't have that person to set that up. And then it hit a point where Nick couldn't come in and save him. He had to help himself, but he didn't know how.
And the road is just littered. It won't be the last one either. Corey Haim, they just all pop into your mind whenever you hear a story like this.
It's
they
sad.
just never figure it out. And then the transition to your 30s and 40s is tough when you're a child star, when you're not having the same success. All right, let's move to our last story, which is not funny, but really cringy. So, KFC. So KFC is obviously a global brand. There's many of them all across the world, including Germany. And they sent out a tweet, an app alert. Sorry, it's an app alert yesterday. Yesterday was November 9th, I believe.
Yes.
And the app said, hey, it's Memorial Day for Kristallnacht. Treat yourself with more tender cheese on your crispy chicken now at KF Cheese. So for those of you who don't know what Kristallnacht is, that was the German pogrom. It was a night when literally Nazis stormed the streets and they broke a bunch of windows. Kristallnacht just means broken glass. And they killed, I believe, 90 people. It was sort of considered the start of...
It's the night when the simmering hatred of Jews that Nazis had just fully exploded on the streets. And from there, it was World War II and the Holocaust.
Deeply somber occasion, particularly in Germany. It's one thing if this KFC and somewhere else said this message.
I'll tell you what it's not. It's not a day for tender cheese on your crispy chicken.
This is my question.
It's a day to remember, not a day to celebrate.
Is any day a day for tender cheese on your crispy chicken? Do people do that? Do people melt cheese on chicken? That's the first level of analysis.
That's what your takeaway was.
The second,
it might be good. You don't know.
So here's what KFC said, and I take them at their word because this is deeply embarrassing. They withdrew the notification. What they had is a system that apparently automatically pulled holidays off the calendar and plugged them into promotional ads and then sent them out on the app. What they didn't differentiate between holidays. So I guess you would get
anything on the calendar. It's like, well, let's make
Happy Valentine's Day. Get some crispy chicken.
It's Grandparents' Day.
Wow.
But it's like,
I think you got to fix this.
It would be sort of like this happening in the U.S. if it's like, Happy September 11th, come out and get your cheesy chicken. Like,
people do that. There's been a couple people that have done that. Yes. But you know what is most exciting for me?
What?
I now know what I'm going to be eating while I'm watching Casey Anthony wearing my Yeezys
We've now completed Jamie's evening.
DVRing Dave Chappelle.
And on that note, we'll see you guys next time.